Hello YouTube, Robert Alvarez, the Psychic Witch, also known as Mr. Lighting in a Fan. You know it's the late night edition now because right now the time is approximately 10:23 p.m. Eastern Time. The date is Sunday, June 27th, 2021. The moon is currently void of course, going from waning in Aquarius to waning in Pisces. The moon officially enters Pisces tomorrow, Monday, June 28th, 2021 at approximately 1:51 p.m. Eastern Time. And the sun is transiting in Cancer. So, it is my pleasure to, hold on, I need to readjust myself. Readjusted. It is my pleasure to resume one of my other favorite series of videos, a More Than a Walkthrough video starring, or rather a More Than a Walkthrough video series starring the Mystic Male Tarot by John C. Jennison Jr., written and illustrated by Mr. Jennison Jr. And I love this deck, and this deck is so appropriate for today, considering that in New York City it is the date of the Pride March. And of course, basic Pride trivia, most countries and most states in the United States celebrate Pride in June because of the Stonewall riots in June 1969. Anyway, but in the meantime, we are next to death. So I'm going to have my awesome audiovisual person do a close-up of this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous back of the card design. I have been raving about this back of the card design for as long as I've had the deck, for as long as I've been doing these videos, and I still rave about this back of the card design. It is so perfect for me, especially as somebody who lives for moonlight, who lives by the moon. And the front of the card design I find very intriguing for a lot of reasons. First of all, there is this thing called necrophilia. But what I find fascinating is that if you look at the left arm of the man, you will see the Ankh. Now the Ankh is the ancient Egyptian symbol of life. It is also the ancient Egyptian symbol of resurrection. You know, it's funny, just as a sidebar, for as long as I can remember, and pretty much for as long as I've been a happily recovered Catholic and a shamelessly proud goddess worshiper, I hear the voice of the goddess in scripture, like, I am the resurrection and I am the life. To me, those are the words of the great goddess, and specifically a goddess who is often depicted holding an Ankh. One of her ancient Egyptian names is Osset, but she's more commonly known as the goddess Isis. And there's the scythe, which is the symbol of the Grim Reaper. We have this red background, this blood red background. And it's interesting because towards the inner part of the card, you have this brighter red color. And it just so happens that blood that is not exposed to oxygen has a brighter, richer, more ruby red color. When it's exposed to oxygen, it has more of a burgundy color. So it's interesting to note and to observe that Mr. Jennison Jr. included that in the background. I find it very intriguing, and I must admit, you know, the gay man in me finds some of this kiss pretty erotic. But that is, as I would say, another topic for another video channel for another day. Anyway, so I'm going to read to you what Mr. Jennison Jr. wrote about the death card, and I'm also going to share some of my personal and intuitive insights with the card. So we have Death, Trump XIII, which is also astrologically aligned with the sun sign Scorpio. Endings mean change. This can be scary or ultimately good. Transformation is an inevitable part of life. Embrace change. And it's ironic considering that in Western astrology, the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, like the sign associated with this card, and Aquarius, are often the least open to change, which is why they are generally referred to as the fixed signs of the zodiac, the Western zodiac. Just a quick check-in with my awesome audiovisual person for my YouTube videos. Did you do close-ups of the back of the card design in the front? You're sure? Okay. Thank you, Drake. And then, oh, that's why this feels wet. Oh, got some Florida water on it. A little super cleanse the card, obviously. Now, in Mr. Jennison Jr.'s little white booklet, this is when the card is upright. This is when the card is reversed. But this is the shadow side. So one could argue that when it is upright, it's the light side. So, with that being said, the shadow side can be resistant to change, not allowing yourself the personal transformation that endings can bring means stalling new growth. So, sometimes, so that we can open new doors, we need to close other doors. Sometimes we need, and this is especially true for people on a spiritual or magical journey, sometimes we need to eliminate certain people from our lives, or at the very least have severely limited contact with them. You know, in some of my previous videos, I've talked about how my association with my biological mother was to the point that it was becoming massively toxic, and I needed to have no further contact with her. The irony is that the third time I did this was the most challenging time. Like, I found it especially challenging and more than a bit difficult to end any association with her, even though I had done so at least twice before and had no problem with it. But it was this last time that was especially challenging for me. But I can honestly say that my life is healthier, especially mentally and emotionally. Hi, Bast. Bast is almost never in the video. That's not true. She's been in the videos. Now you can see a portion of her tail if you look down. Or if my awesome audiovisual person does a close-up of the fact that I'm stroking Bast's tail while, you know, she's around, because, you know, she gets a little skittish sometimes. But she's gorgeous all around. Aren't you, Bast? Yes, you are. I love it. Oh, be careful with your ear. Oh, she scares me when she does that. Anyway. And, you know, for me, the death, and for a lot of people who use tarot, the death card is not about somebody dying. I don't think I've ever given a reading using the sacred tarot where the death card indicated somebody's death. The death card to me is indicative of transformation. It is indicative of life-altering transformation. And it is certainly a card that is an indication that one must make necessary changes. You know, whatever is preventing you, and this is a bit more grand scale, whatever is preventing you from living the life that you feel you so richly desire and deserve, whatever that life looks like, the death card is an indication that this is what you need to do. And it could be one thing, it could be a whole number of things. But this is what must happen first before you can begin manifesting the life of your dreams. And I've often felt, and I've come to appreciate and realize, that when it comes to going from a state of being that is primarily negative and toxic and disempowering to one that is prosperous and peaceful and healthy and well and abundant and exciting and passionate and fulfilling and joyous, one must begin to take the steps to begin moving from my life is crap to my life is illustrious and magnificent. I didn't get there overnight. Believe me, I did not get there overnight. I used to be a very bitter bitch, to be perfectly blunt. And I'm no longer a bitter bitch. I no longer hold grudges. I'm more fulfilled. I may not always be happy, but I'm definitely happier than I've been in a very, very, very long time. I love the fact that my health has improved just in the last month. I love that I'm getting back on track with a lot of things. All my cats are lovingly and happily distracting me during this video, and I'm enjoying it. The only one that's not is Isis, because Isis is on the floor, because she's too hot. and she's been in a bit of a mood today. But anyway, so I really feel like this card is a reminder that there are certain things that need to happen first before we can get to that, I almost said that promised land. And mind you, I am a happily recovered Catholic. I don't quote scripture. You know, when I quote the Bible, y'all better sit down and strap on that seatbelt, because it's going to be a big deal when I, Robert Alvarez, the happily recovered Catholic and moon magic witch, quote the Bible. And with that, I'm going to take a sip of my tea. Adding lemon juice and honey in divine abundance definitely helped me with this tea. Anyway, so, and of course, you know, there's also the fact that from a purely Western astrological perspective, the death card is an indication of somebody who's going to have a prominent role in your life whose sun sign happens to be Scorpio. Although I find it could be somebody whose sun sign is Scorpio, or rising sign, or even moon sign. And it just so happens that in my life, I've met people who are sun sign, rising sign, and moon sign Scorpio. I actually once met somebody who is a sun sign, rising sign, and moon sign Scorpio. And unfortunately, she was just a miserable bitch. She really was. And she definitely was not interested in hiding her disdain for people. Even though I was not as intuitively developed as I am now, I gave her wide berth. I mean, I found her to be one of the most toxic people with whom I ever went to school. She was, on the surface, very pretty, but she was an incredibly bitter bitch. She was a miserable bitch. She was just an all-around unkind, cruel, and disgusting person to be around. And I'm so happy that the amount of time that I spent around her was very short. And, you know, one would, you know, and it's funny because in my life, I've had some of the most amazing people I've ever met, some of the closest friends, some of the most awesome clients and students, some of the most transformative people in my life have almost always been fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And I will tell you that I would have much preferred that she be this transformative, amazing person, but she wasn't. And that's okay, because I don't know where the fuck she is. I don't know where she lives. I don't know where she works, so it's all good. So, you know, one of the things that I invite you to remember, whether you are adept in the tarot, whether you are learning the tarot, whether you just have tarot readings as a client, the death card is not an indication that somebody's going to die. It is an indication that doors are closing and that doors need to be closed. It is an indication that there are things that can no longer continue, and because it is a major arcana card, it is a possibility, depending upon the surrounding cards and the intuitive guidance that the reader is receiving, that you may find that those doors are being closed for you. You know, the universe could be like, you know what, this bitch has taken way too long to close these toxic doors, so I'm going to close them for them. And there you go. And that's how that goes. So YouTube, as always, thank you so much for honoring who I am and what I do. I wish all of you and yours many profound blessings of wealth, health, and happiness. And as always, stay tuned for the next video. And good night.